saying that it's not just me, rather it was all the teamwork that was the cause of fruition of these things. So I'm glad and I'm fortunate to have a lot of good people around me who have worked together, and I would be sharing those success stories with you today. So welcome aboard all the participants, and let me tell you one thing. Let us make it interactive. So I would say, whenever you have a question, please go ahead. You can stop me anytime, and you just have to speak, because I cannot see the meeting page here, and because my presentation is in the full screen mode, so I would not be able to see if you send any messages. Probably they'll pop up, but I'm not seeing the Google Meet window here. So feel free to ask any question, and you're welcome to stop me, interrupt me anytime. And I hope there will be more time at the end to take up the questions which need some kind of a detailed discussion. Is that right, Dr. Shakir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can. Yes, sir. No issue.
So I'm very fortunate and glad that I have been given this opportunity by Dr. Shakir and colleagues, the HRDC, Dr. Faiza Abbasi, who's heading the HRDC, and her team, who gave me this opportunity to interact with all of you and deliver this online lecture on the 16th online Malviya Mission Teacher Training Program on National Education Policy 2020, Orientation and Sensitization. So I will move with I'll just want to give you a few learning points that I will try to accomplish during this lecture. So what we are going to learn together is what is interdisciplinary approach. Many of you would already be familiar with it. Some of you might already be doing it. Some of you might have advanced into it. But let us take it from the scratch, from the very basics, that what is exactly an interdisciplinary approach, and try to understand its nuances. Second, we'll learn how to develop and maintain it. If you have not done it before, these are some practical steps. These are some practical tips that will help you to start an interdisciplinary collaboration. And then the collaboration itself, because that is the means of practicing interdisciplinary approach. How to start, how to maintain, how to sustain, what are the do's and don'ts. So we'll discuss all these points in this lecture. And then I'll share you with some success stories that I have been personally involved in. So that can give you a flavor that this is something that is doable. This is something that has been done by me, as well as a lot of people all around the world. And if you want, you can also do it. Right? So these will be the learning points through this lecture. And I'll start up with this picture. It will be difficult to ask you questions, but I will ask a question and answer it myself. So what do we see here? It is a constellation. And if anybody can identify it.
So is it the Great Bear?
What do you call it?
The Great Bear?
Anybody else? What is the... Very good. So we call it the Orion, right?
Yeah.
The Orion. And this Orion constellation is among millions of stars that we see daily in our sky. Now, when we look at the sky full with the stars, and we apply the interdisciplinary approach where the astronomy and mathematics comes together, we are able to generate some information, something that makes sense, like the sense of the direction. So the entire world is full of information, full of data, and we need to develop this kind of an approach of coming together for making sense of the data. What does it actually mean, and how can we utilize it for the purpose or for solving a problem? Now, I'm sure you must have heard these terms like interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary. And I myself found it a bit confusing at times. What is the difference actually? So I have tried to delineate the definitions for this, and I'll tell you what multidisciplinary is basically drawing on the knowledge from different disciplines, but they're still discrete. They are staying within their boundaries. It's like two circles, they are touching together, but they have got their own domains separated. Whereas interdisciplinary, they analyze, synthesize, and harmonizes the links between disciplines in a coordinated and coherent whole. So we pick up the different things from different disciplines and try to make out some sense out of it, and that is usually something new. I can give you an example that all of us have done some point of our life, like cooking something. So you have different ingredients that are needed to be put together using a certain method, and then you create new dishes. Right? So interdisciplinarity is something similar to that. And then there is another definition which is not very much used, but it is there in the literature, that is transdisciplinarity. Trans is usually the word used for very wide different disciplines. So it's actually integrating the natural sciences, social sciences, as well as health sciences in a humanities context and transcends their traditional boundaries. So I found this definition in a paper which was trying to address the use of these terms without understanding them. Still, interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary are interchangeably used, and they have got a very fine line in terms of their meaning. So I would be telling you examples which will be mostly in the context of multidisciplinary, but they can be qualified as interdisciplinary as well. I hope it's clear, although it looks very confusing. So these three terms, they refer to the involvement of multiple disciplines to varying degrees on same continuum, which means it depends on the overlap. How much is the overlap? And that overlap is deciding these definitions. If there's no overlap, there are just two different disciplines coming together, we call it multidisciplinary. If there's an overlap, we call it interdisciplinary. And if there's an overlap between hugely different faculties, we call it transdisciplinary. So the more general term multidisciplinary is suggested for when the nature of involvement of multiple disciplines is unknown or unspecified. So if you don't know, if you're not sure, you can safely use the word multidisciplinary, right? And I'm sure all of you have seen these rings. These are the Olympic rings. And I was reading the Charter of Olympics, and I found the two words in this charter which were very appealing. The first word is union, and this is these 5 rings are showing the union of the 5 continents and the meeting of athletes from throughout the world to the Olympic Games, which are happening every 4 years. I'm sure you all must have enjoyed these sports and games. So this is going to be the recurrent theme all over this lecture about coming together, working together, putting your heads together, and trying to maximize things. And we'll go into the details in the subsequent slides. So what are the objectives? So the objectives are like for any other approach, we are trying to solve the real world or complex problems. And this can lead us to provide different perspectives on problems. So my 6 could be a 9 for somebody else, right? A biologist might see the cell as a living organism, but a physicist might see it as a complex 3-dimensional structure having a fluid or semi-fluid structure. A physician might look at it as a disease-causing cell. So there are different perspectives on the same problem that we bring together by using this multidisciplinary approach. And this also leads us to create comprehensive research questions. Because once we are involved in our expertise, in our focus areas, it's sometimes difficult to look outside our domains, right? So once we put together this multidisciplinary approach, we are able to ask questions that are more comprehensive and that are beyond the realm of one discipline. And when we take up this approach and we take up rigorous research, we are able to develop consensus. So people come together, they develop the guidelines, they develop the definitions, like IUPAC. So that is a body which come together to come to a consensus on how the chemicals would be represented and what would be the mode of arrangement of them in the periodic table or other aspects of the nomenclature. And this approach has also been used to provide comprehensive health services. I'm sure we have seen the multi-specialty hospitals, right? In the multi-specialty hospitals, all of us want that everything should be under one roof. I was in Medanta, Lucknow, a few days ago, and they are very much advertising themselves as a hospital which can provide these health services all under one roof. How is that possible? They brought together different disciplines, because a human being is not having a problem in isolation. If your eye is hurting, it could be a problem in the eye, it could be a problem due to the blood pressure, it could be a problem due to some allergy. So different specialists have to come together to solve this problem. So this is the approach which is being taken. I've listed here a few examples, but I'm sure you can come up with more objectives. Please feel free to add to it. Now, this kind of a teamwork, which is multidisciplinary, I'll be very frank to say that it has got both benefits as well as there are some drawbacks as well. I would say they are not exactly drawbacks, but the challenges that are being faced when we take up these multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary teams. So focusing on the topic of my talk, I try to define interdisciplinary as something that is between two disciplines. And these disciplines are also not very static. These disciplines are also having changing definitions. Like we already have the classical biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and all that, but we have seen over the years in our career that there are new disciplines coming up. But in the past 20, 30 years, we have seen disciplines like biotechnology coming up, computational biology, bioinformatics, biostatistics, and artificial intelligence, which is combining different disciplines. So interdisciplinary approach might lead to the formation of a new discipline altogether. Like here, I have given an example of bringing together biology and computer science. And when these two fields, they intersect, so we are trying to solve a biological problem using the computer science approach. We call it computational biology. Now, I can tell you that there was, I organized a conference a few years back, and I remember inviting one of my colleagues from Finland, and he started his presentation, and he showed and talked everything about cancer, and people were thinking that he is a physician, he is a cancer expert. But then he introduced himself as a computer scientist. He said, I have a BTech and a PhD in computer science. So that is the beauty of interdisciplinary approach. When you come together, you try to learn new things, you try to shake hands with the other expertise and solve a problem. And this is something which brings together many more disciplines. So interdisciplinary is not just about two disciplines. Rather, in case of the multidisciplinary, in this case, you can see that nanotechnology is touching so many disciplines: biophysics, biochemistry, medicine, photography, mechanics, which by themselves are a confluence of different disciplines. Like, for example, biophysics is made up of biology and physics. Biochemistry made up of biology and chemistry. Similarly, materials and technology, they might go into the field of photography. Or when materials combines with physics, they go into the field of mechanics. So nanotechnology is something that is now supposed to touch all spheres of life. So it is truly interdisciplinary in letter and spirit. And I will show you then in my last slide in the acknowledgement that we have a diverse faculty in the Interdisciplinary Nanotechnology Center and how we try to come together for solving a problem. Now the question is, whether is it optional? Why should I take up this interdisciplinary approach? Is it optional? Yes, I would say. If you are an expert in some field and you want to continue what you're doing without the need to improve or innovate or create something new, then yes, you can just continue doing it. And it's something that a lot of people are doing. They're just expert in their own field and they don't need to do any kind of interdisciplinary research. But there is a word adapt here, which I have put with an underline, that now looking from my experience in 3 different countries, working in 3 different countries, USA, KSA, and India, there is an increasing ecosystem or of funding which forces us to go for interdisciplinary research. That means we need to adapt. We need to take up this interdisciplinary research to adapt to the demands of the federal funding or the funding authorities or the nature of the research that is coming up. It's no longer the research that we have read in the books where one person like Gregor Mendel in his lab, he's working on one aspect and he's able to do everything by himself. And I'll show you in subsequent slides that how the groups are getting bigger and bigger. So it's optional, yes, if you just want to continue with what you're doing, but it's not optional if it is needed by the system or the funding agencies. Some of the funds you might be knowing that they are not even available for single investigators. You have to have a group. You have to involve more than one institutions. You have to involve more than one country. So this is the nature of research that is evolving, and we need to adapt to it. And for that, the interdisciplinary approach is going to be crucial and critical. Also, if you think that you need to innovate or improve, because I am an expert in something, and I know the ins and outs of that particular thing. But if I have to allow another perspective to come in, there are 2 options. Either I learn it myself, which is going to be a long process. It's doable. And a lot of people who are very talented, they have done it. But an easy approach will be to find someone who is already an expert in that field and shake hands and develop this interdisciplinary research approach. And it's also needed if you want to be the trailblazers. Trailblazer means you are creating a new track. You're changing you're trying to change something really which is disruptive. Like I'm sure all of you have used or learned about ChatGPT. ChatGPT has been so disruptive that it has changed the way we used to write with generative AI. And ChatGPT is also not just one discipline. They have taken help from different disciplines like computer science, electronics. There's hardware involved. So there are many disciplines that came together for developing this tool, which is ChatGPT. Electric cars, self-driving cars. These are the inventions that have completely disrupted the way we used to live our life. Even the lecture that I'm giving you on Google Meet, the system, even the mobile phones that we have in our hand, they are all a result of interdisciplinary approach. People from different disciplines, they came together and developed a product which has changed the lives of millions of people. So I'll leave it, the jury is still out, whether the interdisciplinary research is optional. It has got both answers, yes and no. And to further explain it, what we see here is an igloo, right? We don't need a lot of disciplines to make an igloo. Single discipline approach is sufficient, right? Do you agree? But if you want to build something like this, the world's tallest building, which is located in UAE, you cannot just use a single discipline approach. You have to have an inter and multidisciplinary approach to build up something as big and as iconic as this city or this building. So to solve complex things and to make big impacts, we need to take up the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach. So definitely we would ask, what is the benefit of taking up this interdisciplinary approach? Why to take the pain of going out of my comfort zone and shaking hands with somebody and be the trailblazer? We all look into this benefits, right? So let me tell you that when we are taking up this interdisciplinary approach, 1 + 1 is no longer just 2, sometimes it becomes 11. So just 2 investigators, 2 scientists, 2 researchers, 2 teachers, 2 assistant professors or associate professors, or whatever combination you can talk about, just 2 people coming together can have an exponential result, can have an exponential output, which would not have been possible by merely adding them up. And on top of that, we have to talk about the utilization of resources. We all know that the world resources, especially in terms of the funding and the taxpayers' money, that is becoming less and less. We have got more competition in the utilization of these resources. That's why you must have seen the initiatives by the Indian government in terms of Sati to utilize the resources to the maximum level. Equipment worth crores of rupees has to be utilized by many people of different disciplines. So this would be a benefit of taking an interdisciplinary approach. And also, once we are able to utilize the resources in the maximal way, there'll be less wastage. So we are not going to duplicate the whole task. I'm not going to relearn the thing for which somebody else is already available. But as I said, we need to come out of our shells and we need to come out of our comfort zone, and that is going to be difficult. And sometimes the new disciplines are born, like nobody would have heard about biophysics or biotechnology or nanotechnology just a few decades ago. These new disciplines were born because of some people who took the initiative to have this interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach. And this also opens up the possibility of taking up big projects which sometimes span continents, countries. And I'll give you some examples in my subsequent slides. But as I said, it comes with some problems and challenges, this kind of an interdisciplinary approach. First and the foremost, it is really difficult to start. I'm very happy sitting in my chamber, my room, doing my research, reading my books. I am very comfortable with my students, with my lab. I know my equipment, I know my reagents. And to go and start a collaborative research, it sometimes looks like a pain to begin with. And on top of that, to sustain, you must have come across a lot of people saying, "Oh, I want to collaborate with you. You have done a wonderful work." And you start with some emails or something, but then it fizzles out. So sometimes it's easy to start, but it is more difficult to sustain, to carry it on, and to take it to a finish line. That is even more difficult. Why? Because it needs some initial investments in terms of your time, in terms of some money, in terms of uh, your resources, without immediate returns. So you need to put some initial investment that will be probably of no use to you, but it will be of use to somebody else. And that might help in fostering this interdisciplinary approach. And it also needs patience because it takes time to understand each other. It takes time to synthesize the ideas, to crystallize the ideas, to develop these protocols and methods. So it needs a lot of patience. And on top of that, the failure stories. You might hear from people, "Oh, I talked to that guy and we started off, but it didn't work out." And it happens most of the times. And I have personally met so many people who who didn't succeed in developing these interdisciplinary approach because it needs a lot of things. So you might hear those failure stories, and that will dampen your spirit to start or to begin with this interdisciplinary approach. And on top of that, you are an expert in your field, and you think that I want to be well known for this. So there's a fear that if I shake hands with someone, if I share my data, if I share my research with someone, I might lose the control and I might lose the originality that this is my data. So the ownership comes into question. That once we have the interdisciplinary projects, who's going to own that? So there's this fear also that comes in the way of not going for the interdisciplinary approach. And this might also be an aspect of losing identity, that I might lose my identity as a cancer scientist, rather I would be known more as a healthcare expert. So what? As long as it is helping the patients, it's fine. So when we have different disciplines coming together, an obvious question is this popular adage, which says, "Is it jack of all trades and master of none?" A bunch of people have come together and they are not knowing fully something. That's why they have come together, and that's why they are shaking hands, because they don't know their field very well. No, absolutely no. It's a group of masters in their respective fields. If you look at this orchestra, this band, each one of them knows how to play their instruments with an expertise. And that creates a synchronous opera or a synchronous musical band. So it's not a jack of all trades, master of none. Rather, it's the group of masters in their respective fields. Now, when we're talking about the fields, we would wonder that how far these disciplines can be. I mean, how far can we go for developing this interdisciplinary approach? Honestly, they can be very, very far. Like I have listed here some of the examples that you can see on the screen, that the biology and computers, they came together to form computational biology. Statistics and biology came together to form biostatistics. And then you know the famous story of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, the biggest company in the world, and I'm sure I'm giving this presentation on an a MacBook Air. And I'm sure most of you have used the Apple products, and you know that there's a good aesthetic appeal to those Apple products. I'm not advertising for Apple, but this is what Steve Jobs said, that he learned calligraphy, he learned fine arts, and that helped him in developing these aesthetically designed computers and aesthetically designed gadgets, which are more appealing to the people, and they are ready to pay heavy price for that. So computers and fine arts can come together to create this Apple Inc. Then you have got the biology and engineering, which we can see in the field of biotechnology, which is quite mature now. And I just gave you an example about nanotechnology, which is a confluence of these three disciplines: physics, electronics, and engineering were the starting point, but now it has diversified into a lot many disciplines. And this approach is also helpful in teaching. I have seen it in the classroom that you can be more creative in explaining concepts if you have this interdisciplinary approach. Sometimes in a class of physics, you can use the examples of biology to explain things in a better way, and vice versa. And this will definitely help us nurture new talents. New talents means people who can think beyond their own comfort zone, who can think in multi directions, who have the ability to connect multiple dots to come up with a solution. Remember the Orion that we talked about, that Orion can be taken up by astronomers and mathematicians to create some useful information. And this will also help us to prepare the workforce that can cater to industrial needs. That is one of the big mandates in New Education Policy 2020. To fulfill the need of the industry, the workforce should be trained accordingly and not working in silos where everybody has got their own shell or ivory tower in which they are residing without knowing what my neighbor is doing. So I hope I have been able to explain what is the interdisciplinary approach, which was the talking point number one. So interdisciplinary approach provides a seamless integration of expertise and disciplines to provide novel solutions, products, materials, and of course, the new knowledge. Now, a big question is, if you have understood the benefits and the interdisciplinary approach, what is it? The obvious question is, how do we do it? No questions so far? If there's any questions, please, as I said in the beginning, feel free to interrupt me.
No, sir.
Okay, so then I'll move on with the question of how do we do this interdisciplinary approach. So I'll go step by step, and these steps are not the holy grail or they're not casted in the stone. Rather, feel free to suggest or change them as well. I've put here for the sake of guiding you in an easy way. The step one would be to identify and focus on a goal or problem. The first thing is you have to identify what is the problem you're trying to solve, and that should be the focus. Otherwise, it becomes a chaos. Sometimes you want to have an interdisciplinary approach with the people of physics, another day with mathematics, another day with biology. Then it becomes a whole chaos. You have to know that I have to solve a problem, and then you start. And I'll give you an example of developing a novel cancer drug. Suppose you want to develop a novel cancer drug, right? And I'll show you in subsequent steps what is needed to do that. So once you have identified the problem, you start preparing the working plan and protocols. which means you have to have a roadmap in which you have written down everything that what are the methods and protocols that will be used to solve this problem. And that will help you to identify, okay, I don't have this expertise. I don't know how to run a gel, or I don't know how to deal with the viruses, or I don't know how to take it to the clinic, how to translate it into the patients. So it all depends on the complexity of the problem, what kind of problem you're taking. I'm not sure the background of the audience, which disciplines are they coming from, but I hope this example is able to put the steps in perspective. Still, if you have any doubts, please feel free to ask. So the example that I've taken up is developing a novel cancer drug. For that, we have to have the method for identifying a novel drug target, which is the work of a molecular biologist. He will be helping us, he or she will be helping us with identifying the novel drug target. Then comes the role of the in silico testing of drugs. There are millions of drug molecules available, and now we have a possibility of test them in silico. But that cannot be done by a molecular biologist. That has to be done by a computational biologist. Now, the option is either the molecular biologist learn it all himself or herself, or he goes and shake hand with a computational biologist and say, hey, I have this problem. I have identified a target. Why don't you just test some drugs for me? I'm sure you would all agree that the second approach will be faster and better. And once we have identified the drugs, we might need some kind of modifications, or we might have to synthesize a completely novel molecule, for which we need the chemist. And this work cannot be done by neither the molecular biologist or computational biologist or anybody beyond the chemistry domain. So the first step is identifying the problem. Second step is preparing the working plan and protocols. Third step would be onboarding of different expertise. Now you start to bring people on board. Why would you like to bring them on board? You might need to enhance your research output. You are publishing in an impact factor of, say, 4 or 5. But you want to have somebody who can do some computational biology or artificial intelligence-based data analysis. That will increase the impact of your paper. The same data that you have generated in mouse or cells, when you have got an additional data from the clinic, it will have a much better impact. So you would like to bring those people on board for enhancing your research output, or you might want to start a completely new research. You found that, okay, COVID-19 has just gone by and this virus was really notorious. Let me start seeing the effect of this virus in my field. You might think about starting new research. For that, you might need any of these specialties that I've listed here: computer scientists, cell biologists, molecular biologists. These are different specialties, so you might need any one of these, or some of these, or all of these to develop a novel cancer drug, which is the example I've taken. Now, it does not have to be the same set of people from beginning to end. They could be short-term, and we call them as consultants. And the long-term ones, we call them as collaborators. I'll be talking about the collaboration a bit in detail. But I would caution you that please don't put people on board just for decoration. Somebody has got a big name, he's a chairman, he's the director, and that's why I'm onboarding it. I can tell you that it may be helpful in some way, but it's out of the true spirit of an interdisciplinary research. So identify, that brings us to step number 4, that assess the value that will be added to your project. That if you are doing this interdisciplinary approach, you are bringing people on board, what is the value that they are bringing to your project? Are they an expert in some field, which means they are a very good academician, or they are allowing you to utilize the facilities? For example, if you have an industry tie-up or some hospitals, or some physicians who will be giving you access to their patients? Or is it about some funding? And now, some of the venture capitalists or angel investors, they are also scientists by themselves. So they have got the domain expertise as well. So you might want to bring these kind of people on board, and you have a clear idea of what value they're adding to your project. And then you have to find and attract them. Now, where would you find them? Because you have a problem in mind, you found the protocols, you found the methods, you assessed who should be there, you assessed what value they're bringing, but where would you find them? So I'm sure you would agree that conferences and meetings are the breeding grounds for interdisciplinary approach. You get to meet a lot of people, and then you talk, and sometimes the ideas come out of the blue. And sometimes you feel that, okay, we have got a very good synchronization. We can work together. We have the same wavelength. And that has been a successful model for developing the interdisciplinary approach. Or you might look into the research papers if you need a particular expertise. For example, I need somebody as a computational biologist who can test the drugs for my target. So I would see the papers, who is an expert who has done similar kind of work. And then I'll contact the authors and ask them if you would like to collaborate, if you would like to be on board. And the third thing, you can ask a colleague for referrals. You can ask somebody, do you know someone who can help me with the synthesizing a new drug, which has got this chemical formula? You can always ask a colleague for a referral. But don't forget that they can be just next door. There's a saying in Hindi, "Bagal mein tha bachcha aur pure shahar mein dindora pita ja raha." So it could be a similar story that look into within your center, within your department, within your university. You can find them just next door. And again, it's a proven scientific study that coffee or break rooms are proven to facilitate interdisciplinary research. I'll tell you a story that happened with me. So I worked in cancer, right? And I used to have coffee with a colleague who was working on diabetes. So while we were chatting over the coffee, we talked about the connection between obesity, diabetes, and cancer. And we started thinking about submitting a proposal. We submitted a proposal, we got funded, and then we also published that idea of brewing ideas. Not brewing coffee, rather brewing ideas. I haven't seen a lot of culture in terms of the coffee or break rooms, especially in the universities, but these are very common in the research institutions in India as well as abroad, that there are places where people can come together and talk in an informal environment. The conferences, meetings, they are formal environment, whereas in coffee or break rooms, you can find this informal environment. So what would be the value of doing this interdisciplinary approach in research? Because we can see that the problems of life are demanding such kind of efforts. By applying a single approach, it's very, very difficult or nearly impossible to solve a complex problem. We need to bring together people from different disciplines and solve a research problem. So it's no longer feasible to work in isolation. Like Charles Darwin, he took up the voyage all alone by himself, and he went to the island Galapagos and recorded his observations. And that was a great discovery. But this is no longer the case. Now, people are coming together in big numbers and doing research that is more interdisciplinary. For example, the COVID-19, we all have faced that. The vaccine that was developed would not have been possible without the interdisciplinary approach. Because molecular biologists who are working on RNA therapeutics, they were working on RNA-based technologies. So this mRNA vaccine was introduced and was with the help of the virologist who understood the virus that this COVID-19 vaccine was. Some of you might contend that it was not successful or there were some problems, but those contentions apart, it saved a lot of lives, right? Sometimes it is indispensable to take up this interdisciplinary approach in research. So I've summarized here these steps on how to do this interdisciplinary approach. Step number one, identify and focus on a goal or problem. Then you move on to preparing the working plan and protocols. Then you bring people on board and then assess the value that will be added to your project by them, and then go and find and attract the collaborators. If now we have the fair idea of the benefits of doing interdisciplinary research and how do we do it, then I would say that we need to learn a little bit more in detail about collaborations. Some practical hints here. Because collaboration is something that defines interdisciplinary approach. A good collaboration means a good interdisciplinary approach is being taken. And that is going to be the key for the success of an interdisciplinary project. So we come to collaborations, and I'm sure you know this is the Mumbai Sea Link, which is linking Bandra with Worli. So collaboration is something like this bridge. It is bridging different expertise, different people, different continents. And as you could see, the benefits of this Mumbai Sea Link, it was able to improve the traffic. People were able to commute faster. And it also brought prosperity in terms of the better trade and business. And it definitely increased the efficiency of the whole city. So Mumbai was benefiting a lot from this bridge. Similarly, when we collaborate, we build bridges. We build bridges over the disciplines. And that helps a lot in terms of our increasing our research and academic output. Also, we need to collaborate to avoid duplication. Look at these poor fellows. They worked so hard, but since they did not collaborate, it became a total failure, unusable. They wasted a lot of resources in terms of manpower, money, and materials, but they did not collaborate. They wanted to reinvent the wheel, doing it all by themselves, and this could be the result. So we need to collaborate to avoid duplication. And this collaboration has to be symbiotic. Symbiotic means both the parties. Symbiotic is between two parties, but it's applicable for more than two as well. That symbiosis means both the parties are helping each other. It should not be like one is a burden on another one. No, those kind of collaborations don't work at all. Take it from me, write it down somewhere, that collaboration is only possible when both the collaborators, they get benefited from each other. So there's a collaboration among the equals. And I've given an example from the nature, lichens. Lichen is a symbiotic relationship between fungus and algae. There are two different classes of plants. So fungus is sucking the nutrients, the water, and it's giving it to the algae to make food, which is green in color, so it's able to make food. And that food is being given to the fungus to grow. So both fungus and algae, they are helping each other to grow and survive and thrive. Similarly, the case with flowers and insects. Flowers, they need the insects to pollinate. If they don't pollinate, their survival is in question. They need to send out their pollen grains to far and wide places. And the insects need their food. They need the nectar to get their food prepared. So flowers and insects are also helping each other. And this is how a collaboration should be. And I have put them in different stages. It doesn't happen overnight. Rather, it will start somewhere and then it will mature, and then it has to be maintained as well. Sometimes the collaboration starts, matures, and then it is disrupted without having a fruitful outcome. And for that, a very important point is benefit sharing. Benefit sharing means it should be clearly laid out who gets what. I am collaborating with Dr. Shakir. I should be very clearly telling that, look, this is what we are going to do together, and this might be the possible outcome, and this is what you get, and this is what I get. This is the success recipe for a collaborative effort. That benefit sharing should be very clear and transparent. And it could be in terms of the authorship on a paper. It could be intellectual property, like a patent. If a patent is filed, who will be the inventor, who will be the co-inventor? And if there's some kind of revenue generation, some kind of royalty, how will we be sharing it? And if there's a recognition, there's some kind of a media or news item, how we will be handling that. This all should be clearly laid out in a collaborative effort. Benefit sharing is very important. Then there should be very good communication. That, okay, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking that my collaborator knows. I presume that, oh, he would be knowing this thing. No, that absolutely should not be done. Communicate very clearly and concisely about the collaboration. Like how the project is progressing, whether we are getting successful results or we are having roadblocks, what are the developments, which stages are we moving on, and what is the outcome. Like, we got this paper out. If there is any kind of a mistrust among the stakeholders or the collaborators due to improper communication, sometimes you don't want to do it. It's just that you did not communicate. You did not tell them. You don't mean to hide anything, but you did not tell them. So that means you're hiding. So the perception will be wrong. So we need to properly communicate new results. If there is any change in the strategy of the project, if you are bringing new people on board, or if you want to end a collaboration, there's some kind of media interaction or some kind of data sharing. And this this needs a strong leadership. So somebody who's leading this collaboration should be able to build a nice team, and they should be able to keep all the collaborators engaged and motivated and not losing the focus. The problem that you started with, the problem that was the beginning of the interdisciplinary approach and the collaboration. And we should also take the responsibility for delivering. Then, okay, I am the one, if there is any delays, any shortcomings, I'm the one who's responsible and not the collaborators. Don't just blame it on the collaborators. Take full responsibility for that as well. And sometimes it happens that the collaborator is not willing to continue. So make a rational and easy exit plan for them. Okay, fine, we started together, we worked together, but probably your collaborator is moving somewhere. He's going to a different place, different country. Or they don't want to continue this research, they're having a different interest now. Or they might be having some kind of funding problem that they cannot continue with this. So prepare an easy and exit plan for them. Okay, would you like to continue as a consultant? Or would you like to be in touch in case we need each other later on? So that should be the plan for the collaborators as well. They like it. And it will not be like what you started with is going to remain the same all over the project until the completion of it. Rather, you will see that it needs to be adjusted and optimized over the time. You started with an agreement that, okay, we'll have 50-50 workload, but no, You might have to adjust the workload. You might have to say, okay, I'll take 70% of the workload, you take 30%. Similarly, in benefit sharing, okay, we thought that, okay, first author would be my student and the last author would be me. But you might have to say, no, your student worked harder and no, he or she should be the first author. So these things would need some adjustment over the time. And that will also be involved in the adjustment in the methodologies. And while we are talking over Google Meet, but I can say that human interaction is more significant in this digital era. There's no replacement for in-person meetings. And try to celebrate these accomplishments and achievement in person. That makes collaborations stronger. And there is a concept in the West where retreats are done. So we used to go once in a year to a remote place with some kind of, say, a beach or a jungle away from the lab and mingle with each other and have discuss science. So this was something science, or if you're in a humanities background or arts or social science, it's a similar story. The retreats are helpful for that as well. And as I mentioned about the coffee, there was an article in Science Journal that talks about why scientists should take more coffee breaks. And this is a cultural shift between the US, Canada versus Europe. Thankfully, in India, we are very, very culturally connected with each other. There is a very good relationship between the students and the teacher, as well as among the teachers. We happen to socialize a lot. So that's a plus point with the switch we already have. So what it would result into are some major publications, because they have been possible with the help of these large groups of collaborators. And consortium is a large group of institutions. If you remember the Human Genome Project, which was able to decode the 3 billion bases of the human DNA, which was done in 2001 and as well as 2003, it involved 20 different universities. The CERN Large Hadron Collider in France that has got 23 member states. So these are the huge, as I said in the beginning, disruptive things that were done when it was possible only because of multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach. And I can show you that this paper that came out in Nature about the initial sequencing and analysis of the human genome, it involved, this is the author list. Can you see that? It looks like an abstract. And while we are talking about the using the human interactions, definitely the technology is available and we should make use of the technology in fostering collaborations. Like what we are doing now is online meetings. And similarly, we have got tools for online project management, which is also helpful in quick decision making. We need to make a decision quickly. We cannot bring everybody together all the time. We can use the technology for doing these meetings. Or in terms of the data intensive research, data sharing is only possible with the help of the technologies like GitHub, where we can place a large amount of data and share. So with that, we are coming to the end, and I'll share some success stories of interdisciplinary research collaborations that I have been personally involved with. This is my first-hand experience, and I can tell you that these were real success stories. First one, it was an integrative cancer biology program of the USA, where I was involved in Case Western Reserve University, but there was Stanford, MIT, Vanderbilt, Duke, Ohio State University, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, Massachusetts General Hospital, and Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. So they were all connected together with the integrative cancer biology program. And this was in 2003, about 20 years ago. They were thinking at that time on how to bring people together. I was working with mathematicians. I was working with computer scientists. I was working with electrical engineers. And if you look into my publications, you will see them as authors on our papers. I did cell culture work, and they were developing the ordinary differential equation based mathematical models. I could have never done those mathematical models, and they could have never done the cell culture. So this was a very successful experience, and in fact, this was my starting point for interdisciplinary research and training that I have built upon subsequent years. So when I moved from USA to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I built up a colorectal cancer research program. So I was the chairman of the program, and I brought people from oncology, the clinical side, pathology, and then gastroenterology, surgery. And then also I had Professor Houtanayami. I told you the story about him. He's the one who was the computer scientist. He's a computer scientist. He has a PhD in computer science. Professor Nelson, he is an expert in metabolomics from Sweden. And Professor Farzane, he was a molecular biologist from UK. So I brought them all together, and there were some more disciplines within the program to make this program successful. And again, it was able to infuse the interdisciplinary approach among the people, and they started thinking on projects that can be done by bringing these expertise on together. And when I came to Aligarh Muslim University in India, again, the same model I tried to replicate. So I made a cancer nanomedicine consortium, which was approved by the Vice Chancellor last year as a consortium. Now here, this is a no-cost consortium, but you can see the people are from, he is from surgery, he's from pathology, he's a molecular biologist, he is a metabolism expert, he's an artificial intelligence expert, and he's the radiotherapy oncology. And I'll just tell you, see, this is one of the projects that we have been thinking about, that we collect the sample from the surgery. The surgeon will help us in doing that. Sample of the patient's tissues, which will be assessed in the pathology department. Then the molecular studies, which means analyzing their DNA, RNA, proteins, and metabolites, will be done by me and the gynecology and metabolism department. That generates a lot of data because we were thinking about employing the next generation sequencing. And this data needs to be utilized for model building by the expert in artificial intelligence. And also it has to be tested in silico. We cannot test it on patients, but there are other preclinical models that we are thinking about. And finally, it goes into the clinic for the benefit of the patient. Now, you would appreciate that none of this work would have been possible by a single lab or a single person. So we built this consortium, and hopefully it will, I cannot say it's very successful as of today, but I can assure you that yes, it will be successful. We already have got some papers and books coming up out of this consortium, and we also have some projects that we have submitted together. And I hope this model is replicated all over the country, and I've written to different bodies like DBD, ICMR, and DST, and they are acknowledging this idea. So you must have heard about this initiative by the Government of India from Center for Excellence. They wanted to have consortiums from different disciplines to solve a problem. So I hope this will take up the speed, and we will start thinking in that direction. With that, I would like to quote Majrooh Sultanpuri, "मैं अकेला ही चला था जाने दे मंजिल मगर लोग साथ आते गए और कारवां बनता." So if you have the determination, if you have the ability to make collaborations and sustain them, and the tips that I have given in today's lecture, maybe that will be helpful, you will see that you will have a lot of strength from your colleagues, from your team, and you'll be able to accomplish a lot more than what you could envision by doing alone. With that, I would like to acknowledge their long list, but I have tried to summarize it into institutions. So this is the beautiful campus in Cleveland of Case Western Reserve University, where I used to work. Then I had the Cleveland Clinic. It is the #1 hospital in the US. And then King Abdullah International Medical Research Center in Saudi Arabia. And this is my present team, which I am leading. Professor Azhar Ahmed, he is a well-renowned nanotechnologist, and he is able to synthesize nanoparticles and characterize them. And Dr. Swaleha Naseem, she is an expert in physics. She is doing spintronics, degree in PhD in physics. And we have got Dr. Qasid Anwar, he has got a PhD in chemistry. He's an expert in metal organic frameworks. And we have got Dr. Syed Afzal Ahmed, who is an expert in electronics. So you can see the diversity. Professor Afzal is basically a microbiologist, physics, chemistry, electronics, and myself, a biotechnologist, and with a focus on cancer nanomedicine. So we are working together to solve this complex problem. So this is what would summarize my talk and give you the message for taking up interdisciplinary research. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you. I will be happy to take any questions. Any questions?
Yeah, very good evening, sir.
Very good evening.
Yeah, this is
You have
Dr.
to
Ram.
open your mic and speak. Raising hands is fine. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Vineet, please.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. I am assistant professor at IIMC, Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Jammu campus. I taught digital media. You have said all these things about science, but not talk about social science. So, as a media student, how can I collaborate other department, other if it may be science or it may be social science? So, may you elaborate something?
Wonderful question, and I'll give you a very nice example. See, I presented because I have a science background, so I tried to put that into perspective. But I'll tell you, have you seen the movie Nemo, Finding Nemo? It was a very good animation movie, right? The producers of this movie, Finding Nemo, they consulted a fish expert, which is known as, they consulted a fish expert to learn how a fish moves. What is its tail movement? And they hired and collaborated with the fish biologists to make an animation movie. I think you are in mass communication, and if you need an expert advice to depict something on the screen which is realistic and which looks very natural, you need to collaborate. You need to have this interdisciplinary lecture, interdisciplinary approach for creating these iconic movies. Finding Nemo was an iconic movie, right?
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Yes, Dr. Ramkumar, I think you had a question.
Yes, very good evening, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. Actually, I have listened your entire lecture, sir. It is begin with from Darwin's to the computational biology, right? Though it is a need of time because now technology is developing, and we are also have to improve our subject with improving technology. But sir, with improving technology, where our basic research means like the principal subjects like basic biology, basic physics, or basic chemistry, where they are lying in your opinion?
Well, basic studies are the basic. Without them, we cannot do anything. I'll tell you an example again. How basic is this birds, studying the birds, the ornithology? It's a very basic science, right? But the song of the birds that has been utilized by the musicians. So musicians are going into basic research to find out the tones and the songs of the bird that they can utilize in their music composition. And there are specific positions that are advertised for such kind of bird experts. So very basic zoology, botany, chemistry, and I also give an example of the chemistry people. Chemistry people are needed to synthesize the molecules. They cannot. This is very basic biology, basic chemistry, right?
बेसिकली मेरा कंसर्न ये था कि जैसे टेक्नोलॉजी ग्रो कर रही कहीं ऐसा ना हो कि आने वाले टाइम पे जो बेसिक साइंसेस हैं
नहीं बेसिक साइंस बेसिक है वो रहेंगी, वरना टेक्नोलॉजी फिर सिर्फ बगैर फाउंडेशन का किला हो जाएगी, वो तो जरूरी है. Yeah, Dr. Suma Singh, I think you.
Yeah, good evening, Professor Aziz. For somebody coming from a social science background, this has been such an eye-opener. A big thank you. Because these are, terminologies that we keep hearing, but we are not able to, we ourselves don't have a distinction of multi, inter, intra. The way you explain, kudos to you, hats off to you. Because I think one of the advantages you had was you were sharing a lot of your own personal experience. So for me, the learning from this session is I get a better knowledge of what these three critical areas of research are. But more than that, I think, Professor, what I learned from you is unless we don't get into the zone, the real learning will not happen. Thank you. You're a wonderful speaker. God bless you, and I'm sure there's bigger success for you ahead. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, Dr. Pallavi Gupta, I can see a hand raised from your side.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
I just wanted to add something
Please.
how do you finish, because when you speak about interdisciplinary, I think because I teach economics, I think I'm fortunate enough to have a subject itself which is very interdisciplinary in the very basic manner, because economics is incomplete without statistics and mathematics. And we have to look at a little bit of history to analyze and make trends. And we also go in now into computer sciences to be able to do some prediction and trend analysis, and to order to benefit from econometrics tools that we have to learn something about data and computer science. So I think for the students of economics, this comes very naturally to have a multifaceted and interdisciplinary subject such as ours. But for you, and by looking at the presentation, it is amazing, the kind of work that you've done. And I wish you all the best. I lost my father to cancer 13 years ago. So it's a very important, it's an extremely important field. I wish you all the best in your work, sir.
Thank you so much. And I feel sorry for your father. Rest in peace.
Thank you, sir. Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words. Yes, Dr. Shakir, I don't see any more questions here. I'm getting a lot of messages. Thank you, everybody who has written a message appreciating it. And I hope my contact details will be available through some platform. So you can contact me anytime, and whatever way we can help each other in the true spirit of interdisciplinary research. So nothing has to be said. I will just say one more sentence. That as a student, yes, we all have learned different subjects at one time. We have appeared in exam. But once we go to the other side of the fence, when we become faculty, we start thinking about specialty and super specialty and expertise. Let us keep that student alive in us. Let us keep that learning alive in us, which will help us in interdisciplinary research. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And Dr. Shakir, is there anything that we'd like to take over from here?